Welcome back to We Know Scripted TV, where this week We Know Industry Season 3, Episode 4, White Mischief. My name is Grace, but of course I'm not alone. First, I'm joined by Josh Wigler. Josh, how are you doing? Welcome back.
Thank you. Very happy to be here. A little short on cash.
Oh, no.
A little short on money.
Well, in an episode that saw plenty of marital bliss, Emily Fox is...
This is why I keep trying to tell you, why don't you let me help with the finances?
No, I don't want to bother you with all sorts of stuff.
I think the role would be reversed though, because like you're the one with a little bit of podcast money, right? Like,
is that right?
I don't have any.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. I have podcast.
Maybe you can throw some money in.
Podcast. Yeah.
The amount of like podcast making fun of that's happened in television and movies over the last few, like there's literally like in the Ghostbusters movies a character that's called Podcast. That's kind of like the comic relief.
Wait,
in this
what?
one, they were like, yeah. I believe it's in Ghostbusters. I think that's right.
Wow.
Or maybe that's Mighty Ducks. Feel bad that I'm stepping on.
I was
Anyway,
gonna say,
doesn't matter.
All of these ridiculous remakes.
Yeah.
I can't keep my reboots apart. But in this one, they were like, actually, podcasting is like wildly successful. Actually,
I mean,
a wildly successful business endeavor.
Tell that to post-show recap.
All right,
knew post-show recaps. We knew podcasting. Now we know industry, and we're thrilled to be back. Thanks to the great Jessica Sterling for holding it down while we were gone. We left the industry podcast, Emily and I, just in time for the whole gang to go on a field trip together, and we came back just in time for all of them to just be like, Rishi, could you hold this one down? Could you just handle this whole episode?
This was a lot.
It was a lot. It was a lot.
Yeah, it's perfect. Last week's episode. So, a friend of yours and mine, Dr. Amanda, actually think it's an incredible disservice to compare the show to Succession. Actually, but I do feel like season 3, they're taking all of the things they learned from watching Succession, the showrunners here, and are taking the best bits and putting them into their show. This show last week, I think, did have very Succession vibes of like, what if they all go to Switzerland? What if they all get on a private jet and they go and they gallivant and we'll get all the characters together, back together. And then this week, what I think they took from Succession is just how to make me feel incredibly uncomfortable. That pit in my stomach that I don't often get, but I did get from many Succession shows, mostly from one Kendall Roy. Rishi certainly made me feel that way this week. This was an incredibly upsetting episode, I think. It's a horrific episode, but I thought a tremendous episode of television, Emily.
I mean, R to the E she. Like,
wow.
What do we do? Wow. Like, that was like, yeah, very cringeworthy. And, I think the point where you watch him really go on that like full on bender and you're just like, oh, come on. Like, you're up right now. Like, maybe we stop. No. Oh, okay. Bottle service. No, maybe we stop. Okay. Nope. We're going to get into a fight. We're going to go back and gamble it all away again. Cool. I feel horrible. Like and then you watch him walk in to the office and it's just like such a frenetic, horrible feeling. And I don't know, I'm particularly jet lagged right now. So it might've felt even more heightened in this state, but I don't know, Josh, did you feel that way too?
No, it's true.
Yeah. I feel crazy right now.
I also feel very jet lagged.
Yeah.
Emily and I were on the other side of the planet from where we are currently, and our return home to New York, Grace, has been populated with these really like deep naps at strange times during the day that feel closer to dying than sleeping. That like we're like touching like the void as we go deeper into like our dream states. We've had lots of great conversations like comparing like what kind of nightmare did you have just now? And so like we both feel like we've been touching the void, skimming the void. And so watching Rishi go through what he was going through, this was weird because this one was a waking nightmare. This one was actually happening in front of my eyes. So yeah, this is a hard one. But a really, really, really well-made episode of TV. I think if you're calling this reminiscent of Succession in terms of like the discomfort that is coming from this, another HBO show that this episode reminds me of is The Leftovers, actually. I feel like this Rishi episode has some shades of feeling like Reverend Matt having a very, very bad day.
Yeah, I think that tracks. Rishi is an interesting character to me because he's on the poster for the show, but I think he's sort of the least serviced of any of the characters currently in season 3. And I thought this was a fascinating sort of insight into just opening up Rishi entirely, focusing on him. I love the way that it does feel like it's just like a Rishi centered episode, but it is weaved back into at least Pierpoint, maybe not specifically the current story we've been tracking. There's basically no Loomy in this episode, but the character development of who this person is and then the roller coaster that he goes on within one episode, I thought was pretty tremendously done, in a way that I think that I think season 3, one of the things that I've been noticing as I talked about, I think it's episode 2, where sort of both Harper and Yasmin get told, like, don't do illegal stuff, and I thought that was really an interesting place to put us in. I think Eric has been very interesting this season in terms of someone who basically I feel like was sort of a mysterious, powerful figure, and that has also been a little bit exposed. He's basically like, I don't normally use this word, but I feel like he has been cucked.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And then this episode, I feel like, by the end of the episode, do you think that, like, there's 2 moments this episode where you're like, he got out of this like terrible mess he's in, and he both times falls right back into the same traps that he has chosen for himself, that he's stuck in, probably because of addiction issue. He clearly has it's said he has a gambling addiction, but he seems to just be this person. And I don't, in terms of, I feel I'm comparing it to Succession, but this, like, people don't really change thing of Succession. This episode is quite heartbreaking in terms of, like, I do feel like this was a pretty pessimistic take on this character, Emily, in terms of, like, he is who he is. I think
I'm gonna have a hard time getting the shot of him at the urinal, like, looking at porn and then like nose bleeding onto his child in like the baby Bjorn that he's on, like, in like that was like a particularly dark moment. That was really hard to watch, where I was just like, come on, man, you're a dad, like, get it together. But at the same point, we call him a misogynist and a chauvinist and all of these things.
Yeah, let's get it right. He's not a misogynist. He's a chauvinist.
But no, he's doing all the same stuff he was doing before. And his wife is like, I just wanted you to see me as your wife still. But he's like, no, you're a mother now. And it's like, you can't twirl that around and throw that at her and then be doing the crazy stuff that you're doing at the same point. Like, it's just so backwards and so dysfunctional and really, really hard. Like, it's, well, yeah.
Josh, one of the things of this episode is that so many people tell him how he can fix himself. She says it. I thought one of the most interesting lines on the episode is she says, we used to be cruel together. That's what she said. She's like, we used to make fun of other people, and that's how we fell in love.
That's how Emily and I keep the spark in our marriage.
Cool together.
We're ruthless together. Oh my God.
I mean, the whole HR meeting, Josh, where they're all like,
what, against me and Emily? Yeah, that was wild. With the HR department is like,
people just leaking our comments to each other on Reddit.
On an anonymous Reddit.
Yeah, have you seen the Reddit that overheard at RHAP? It's pretty
God.
It's dangerous over there. I don't look. Don't
like that.
Nobody, don't make that even as a joke. Nobody out there who's listening, don't even make that as a joke.
I believe that's actually called the RHAP out of context Twitter account.
Oh, yes. Lord.
Yeah. Yes. But Rishi, he gets told in this HR meeting, they're like, no, you have a backwards view. You're mean. Anurag's just like, I literally have anxiety about coming to work because how specifically you will treat me. And this man doesn't change by the end of the episode. He's just still who he's that's just who he is.
No. And so Rishi is I think one of, like, the really truly great characters of industry. He has this very singular role within the company that, don't try and get me to explain to you exactly what it is, but I am aware that what Rishi does is very particular, and is he
has a particular set of
skills. Not unlike Liam Neeson, but I think that,
Grace, would you like to give it a shot so that we can save Josh?
I am happy to explain what happens in this particular episode. In terms
But
of what
I do
happened.
think like beyond, but this is
Yeah.
part of the appeal of industry, right? It's like you don't really need to know
You
what's
don't really.
going on with the money in order to grok what's happening.
I
in
mean,
the
you should
show.
have a general
All right,
idea.
Emily, could you leave me alone? Actually, would be great.
Wow,
no,
you guys used to be cruel together, and now
yeah,
you're being
now
cruel
you're
to
just
each
being
other.
cruel to me alone. I
Ever
have
since you bled on the cat, Josh, I just
have
can't
a-
forget it.
I have a point that I'm
There
trying
she
to
is,
make.
right there.
I'm
Poor
losing
cat.
it quickly. What I was going to say, to put it back
Mhm.
to Liam Neeson, is that I think that both the audience and the writers were really taken with Rishi.
Mhm.
You know, a guest star in season 1 gets
Mhm.
upped for season 2, and up to this point in the show has just been the guy who's like, he's got that very particular job that Grace will explain to me momentarily. But beyond that, he also has this very specific role in the show as somebody who just like throws Molotov cocktails into the middle of like, is chaotic with his dialogue, is horrible to people. But in the same way that when you're watching a show like Succession, and now we're talking about industry specifically, like you can't help but kind of like, oh my God, that character is so awful that he's so great to watch. And Rishi is like one of those characters that is almost, in some ways, almost feels more two-dimensional than many of the others on industry because he serves that function, because he's almost cartoonish in how outlandish he is. And so here in an episode that really breaks form for industry, this hasn't happened on industry before, where
No.
we are just really in the perspective of one character. You know, there have been strong storylines that have been like, you know, strongly favoring like a Harper episode or a Yaz or any of them, but we've never had an episode that is effectively completely told from one character's perspective. So a guy who has not had a ton of obvious depth is suddenly the character that you are thrust into their headspace. And so you're invited to understand. Well, I don't even know if you're invited to understand necessarily, but you're invited to ride shotgun through his addictions, through his myriad sins, through his downward spiral and his self-destruction, and how you walk out on the other side of that, whether you're going to feel closer to Rishi or further away from Rishi. I just think that he's a fascinating character to have been the one to do this with, because I think there are a lot of other shows where like, you know, he's just sort of like a Cousin Greg type. Where he's like, you know, he's really a very reliable joke factory, but is never going to get like a really meaty storyline. And then here we are halfway into industry's 3rd season, this deep into the run of the show, and Rishi's the guy who they task with this. And I think a big part of it, again, is like the audience response to the character, and industry doing such a good job of I think keeping you as stressed out as the characters as a viewer. I think that this show really wants you to feel that energy that they are feeling as well. And Sagar Radia, who plays Rishi, was very reliable as a source of like really thorny, prickly comedy. But can you turn that like misogynistic, self-destructive guy into a dramatic lead for an hour as well? I would say they absolutely did it. I think that this is a really, really spectacular episode of the show. I think my guess will be that this is like talked about in the conversation of like the best episodes of industry. Anyway,
Yeah,
now can you tell me what it is he does for work?
Do you want me to? Do you want
Yeah,
me
what's
to
his
explain
job?
this? Well, he is a trader. He does trade, much like
Okay, and not
the other
like you said, the like
not
with the
like a
hood.
trade.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. He's definitely not he's definitely not faithful.
Not faithful, not a faithful,
No.
very unfaithful, in fact, with a snow globe, Emily.
So he is a trader. Specifically in this episode, we are mostly actually dealing with something that we actually kind of moved away from on the show, which is the foreign exchange team, which is the team that Harper and the work that sorry, not Harper, Yasmin used to specifically do. That's what she was focused on. And this is about basically trying to guess how the value of specific currency across the world will go up or down in value, and trying to trade a bunch of it so that when it's at a low amount, so that you can cash it in when it is worth a lot more. And specifically, what Rishi has put a ton of investment in, almost by the end of the episode, $1 billion worth of stock into the value of the British sterling, the British dollar, using
British sterling.
The British Jeff Sterling. I'd love to meet the British Jeff
I would
Sterling.
love to meet the British Jeff Sterling. Great character.
In combination with the risk the risk increase allotment he was given for specifically the Lumi stock increase. Bill comes down, he's like, yeah, we've got to buy as much Lumi stock. Your risk level is higher, so you can trade more money. And he's also getting Onraj to do it as well on the side. So he has so much invested in the value of the British pound going up in value. They use the word cable a lot in this episode. The cable is basically just the connection between the link between the US dollar and the British dollar. It's done that because the way it used to be traded was through undersea cable. So it's called the cable. So you hear a lot of them being like, yeah, they want cable. They want basically to invest in the British pound. And the thing here is that the government is announcing a surprise emergency budget in which they're going to reduce the tax dollar from the top. And I really thought that this was like just really this is how nerdy I am. I loved this stuff of being like, okay, what does that actually mean in terms of Rishi's like, oh, what this actually means is like businesses, very rich people will come and spend their money. He's talking about trickle down economics and the little family meeting at the pavilion. Companies will come and they'll see this as Britain will be a place where they can invest their companies. They'll start because they won't have to pay a high tax rate. But what everybody else sees it as is like, Britain's not actually going to make as much tax and they're not going to be able to pay their debts. And so the value of the dollar is going to drop. And that's the immediate reaction people think. And so the dollar goes down until they reverse it and it goes back up. And Rishi has this amazing, incredible win. What I also like in this episode is that you have his personal addiction, like the ways in which his addiction to gambling affects his personal life, and also clearly the way his addiction issues are affecting his professional life. And in one instance, it actually makes him a successful, other than the personal interactions he has with his coworkers, it makes him a very successful business person at Pierpoint. And his gambling addiction costs him horribly his own personal life. So the way that those two things were wrapped up into one story, I thought was pretty incredible. But just to build up what you were saying, Josh, Emily, what I thought was, I think that one of the things about doing an episode this late, there is almost a boon to Rishi being a bit of an unknown until this point. And the way in which we are thrust into the story, I think is actually, it's beneficial to us because I feel like what it felt like of a roller coaster ride was like, we don't have as much, baggage and attachment to Rishi as we would say if this was like a Harper episode about like a night like this for Harper. I don't think we have we know so much about Harper and we've been so invested in Harper in a way that I thought like this, like, what are we doing here in this episode? Almost, Josh, I would say Coach Beard-esque. Actually, if we're talking about
Rishi After Dark.
Rishi After Dark. But I think it was a benefit to pick a character who we knew so much and then to like crack him open and be like, oh my God, look did you know this was in
this was literally crack him open. Like he is just like bleeding and like, bludgeoned. Like there's so much going on.
He took significant bludgeoning damage.
Like he really got hurt. I think that it's really compelling to watch a character like his specifically because, he seems really capable at his job. On a baseline level, they wouldn't have kept him around for this
Harper
long.
Is, I think. So Harper's like businessy. She's amazing. Personally, There's maybe a little bit of there's some issues.
But like, what are we really looking at when we take a look at some of these characters specifically, right? Like everyone is damaged goods in some way, shape, or form, and that's what makes them so good at their job, supposedly, right? Like there's a lot of cutthroat tactics that are used. Some are very uncouth, as we discussed previously. There are a lot of personal issues that everyone sort of tries to tamp down with a variety of substances. And Rishi is just part of like the cog in the machine, right? He is one of those examples of somebody that's got a lot going on. We're not entirely sure, is this a sustainable lifestyle for him? Probably not. I think he snorted more coke than we've seen in most other episodes. Like that's not great. But you're also seeing the pressure of what it's like to work in this industry. And surely you don't have to take it to this extreme, but he has so much riding on all of the different things he's managing at work. And then personally, you're seeing a sliver of his life in which he moved to the country his wife didn't anticipate having a baby. Like, that's a very big deal in a relationship, to suddenly change the entirety of like your real estate and where you are and what your expectations are as a family man suddenly, and taking on all of like her side of the family's sort of interests, and wanting him to kind of like mesh with everything, but also he's just this out of control addict, and lives for the now and isn't really thinking about the future. I mean, the first shot of him looking at the statements of his accounts and seeing how much he's in debt, like, that made my stomach turn. I was like,
Yeah.
oh, like, sir, and then you just see him escalate and give his watch over to the guy. And like, you're just like, no, this is going to be bad. And I'm so surprised he didn't get beaten up then. I was like kind of waiting to see like how that was going to go. I don't know. It's so
his
dramatic.
friend actually, like,
He was like, this'll hold you over for a little while. And I was like, wow,
gave him
what
the
a
friend
reasonable,
discount.
what a reasonable thing to say.
It was a week, and normally it would be a day, but
It
because
would be like
Yeah.
2
he's a
days.
friend,
He's like, you're my friend though, so watch will buy you a week.
that's the great Asim Chowdhury, who was on Taskmaster and been in
Yeah.
a bunch of stuff recently. Great to see him.
Yeah.
What would Rishi
yeah.
do on Taskmaster?
I probably actually, I think
Depends on how many bumps he
He's a
takes
very creative
beforehand.
thinker.
I do think so.
And then
But I
to, like,
do think that like the incredible like roller coaster ride of Rishi through this episode is such a great exploration of the highs and lows of like the artist, right? Like the creative mind, and how they often talk about how like the best artists and the best musicians are like these horribly tortured souls that have to chop their ear off in order to like create like incredible, things that seem almost superhuman. And I think in this world and in the job that Rishi possesses, that Grace you described earlier in the episode, that I definitely still have, that he is, he's like a maestro, clearly, right? Like there is something that is like, and so much of it is based on his willingness to just throw himself, whether it's willingness or this gravitational pull into like a chaotic vortex. And I think like exploring that through that kind of a character is this really heightened way of exploring a lot of the various themes that are at play in industry. And I'm really glad that we got to do it through a character who has just been comic relief mostly up until this point. What I would guess is, and maybe I'm alone on this, but like, I think that by the end of the episode, Rishi goes straight back to where he was, right? Like he's doing it all over again. And the point of that to me is like, some people are just like typhoons, they just keep going and they keep going.
you
and
sound like you're speaking from experience, like we weren't just almost in a typhoon.
They're just like elemental forces, right? Like I think some people are just like that, and Rishi is just like that. And I don't know that it will ever like really like not that it won't matter in the show, but I don't expect like a ton of follow-up on Rishi's gambling problems.
Here's the thing. He doesn't actually suffer real consequences.
Yeah. This is this is exactly what I was going to say. I'm like, because he these things happen to him. And what I thought was really well done about this episode, and why I think it actually worked really well, is I think we understand throughout the episode, through these series of things that are the information we get about his life, I think start to make sense in terms of how does he end up in this position of, where maybe his gambling addiction manifests from, like there's a lot, when he owns this pavilion and he's walking outside, and I think it's this guy, Nicholas, who it's funny, I hate him as well. I hate Nicholas. I hate him so much.
Deeply unlikable.
Yeah. And I mean, to be fair, the first thing I'm going to say is that he's like, I don't know, maybe it's not Nicholas, maybe it's another guy who's like, you shouldn't, no loitering. And he's like, dude, I own this place. Like, come on, man. Like, so he's experiencing like racism and, and so where he sort of like is compelled. And then, the highs of this work and what he gets out of his personal life are obviously extremely satisfying for him in the moment. And he has obviously, like you would hope that for some people, the moment where you get beat up would be and then go back and gamble all your money away, that might be rock bottom. But it's not for him, because both at work, he wins huge. They reverse the policy. The sterling goes up in money, and they turn $1 billion worth of sterling around and make a profit. And then his wife bails him out with her podcast money of their own personal debt, the debt that he owes. So he immediately is like, I'm gonna gamble all the money.
I'm gonna gamble away
again. So he never really hits rock bottom. You're right, Emily. He does not have consequences.
And his wife's not even mad at him at the end. Like,
they sleep together.
They have sex that night. Did you see
I think
that?
I would have been like, "Hi, you're gonna sleep in the other room. Like, bye."
Which is why I don't gamble. I like my bed. I like sleeping in there.
Do you even like what? You've probably gambled like what, 3 times ever?
Yeah,
yeah,
gambling. There's a lot of different ways to describe gambling. In like the traditional sense of like putting money in like a gambling situation. It's not really a thing I do. I love to watch gambling.
Yeah, that's true.
I like to I've probably been inside of a casino like 5 to like 6 times in my life. And like I have one friend who gambles, and like it is not his personality at all.
No.
And then he gets put in front of a slot machine, which is like the most boring thing to watch, except that it's my friend who is pulling the lever, and he's out of control. And it's like what happened to Marge Simpson, the gambler of it all. So that's what happens to cousin Ben of the Succession podcast.
Yeah, that's right.
Right.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, Rishi faces no consequences. So why? I do think
he gets to sleep in bed with her. His little feet are kicking out at the bottom of the bed. Like, dude's like having a great night. That part. Like, that's like where like this show
gets his dog. He gets his dog back.
This show, this is the horniest show ever. Like, even after all of that, come on, guy. Yeah, and then he takes a cricket bat and gets the dog and just goes right back at it. He's got a feeling
remodeling the pavilion.
There was something he said about Lady Luck that I can't recall the exact quote on.
Would you like it? I wrote it.
No, I don't think we should. It's
not Lady Luck. It was Fate.
Fate.
He was shaving an area just for him.
Shaving. Yeah, Fate was shaving an area. Yes,
just for me.
That's right.
But I do think Industry is a show that I think I think the best example of this is that there is this thing that seems like it would be pretty important very early on. It does feel like it's playing from the Suits playbook, that it's like Harper never actually graduated from university. So she actually has this job kind of like, that's she shouldn't do that. And it goes away. It like Eric finds out, and then they're like, oh, we don't need that. But they just tuck that in their back pocket. And at the end of season 2, they're like, here you go. Here's this thing. So I do think there's a potential that Rishi is sort of, I think, the most like he definitely is comic relief. He's not central to a lot. Like, he is there, but he what he's doing and saying and the decisions he's making have not been super central to the plot of the show. But I think now, knowing this information, there is the way that I think Industry very cleverly can now sort of pull this whenever they need to. There'll be some story that's happening later, maybe even a season from now, and then they'll be like, involve Rishi and the whatever, and it's like, Rishi's actually like
they've got the tape for a really salacious previously on,
100%. Yeah, 100%. Yeah. Where do we go from?
Well, yeah, no. Well,
I mean,
the HBO gods,
drugs.
The HBO gods gifted us, like, in many ways, like an easy one to talk about this week.
I know.
Because like, don't do drugs, don't masturbate while holding your baby and bleeding on it. I think
he was just peeing.
Well, can we?
Well, he was
he was sweet peeing. That's Sweet Pea's OnlyFans. That's her OnlyFans. That he was looking
He was
at.
Sweet Pea peeing. Yeah.
Oh,
and Sweet Pea is what, as we know, that's what Henry Monk is interested in.
I think it was an interesting episode in how it, while still being locked into Rishi's perspective, kind of advanced some of where we're going. Like, so like that lights out again, this time for real for Lumi, I think is where it seems like we've landed, which is where we were suggested to go at the end of last week.
I wonder if Kit Harington got sick or something, and they were like, quick, throw the Rishi episode in.
Well, I do wonder. We don't know, like, I'm not, we're not watching it. We don't know what happens next. So I do wonder in terms of just in this moment, so this could totally change, but is this the right place to put the Rishi episode. We sort of, it does feel like we are in, I feel like the first 3 episodes are a little bit of a satisfying arc in terms of what we got. I
That's
think there's
true.
the phrase I've been hearing about industry is that they burn through plot. They're like, that thing that you thought in another show would take a full season, not us.
Yeah.
By the end of season 3, Lumi is done. Henry has sold all his shares on the advice of Yaz. But I do feel like we were at a very interesting place at the end of last episode, which Jess and I talked about. You two were away, but you have watched, which is this, like, the return of Harper and almost the role reversal of Harper, sort of Harper making Eric turn his head to make eye contact. The Leviathan coming out from under the sea. I love the name, still love the name. Leviathan.
Do we need to name our podcast? Like, do we need to come up with something like that?
Oh, like our little, our trader team.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Leviathan is really good.
If people have a recommendation,
Leviathic.
I don't want that. I think
Leviathan versus Leviathic.
I mean, sometimes the opposite.
I was seeing thumbs downs in the chat, and we're not even live. This is pre-taped.
But how do you feel? I mean, this general question is, we get this sort of, I feel like this moment, I do feel like there is an ending of an arc in terms of, like, okay, now we're in a place that feels more like what we might have expected from industry in terms of, like, Harper is not so separate from Pierpoint now. She's sort of like, she's not at Pierpoint, but she's heavily connected to Pierpoint in a way. But we do pretty much entirely stop down on that story. Like, we get no real Lumi, no real Yaz, no real forward momentum other than some Harper buying cable. Basically.
I don't know where else you put something like this, if not at the end of something that's, like, relatively, if not closed, then at least, like, it's like it's being held in an interesting place. I really have no issue with the placement in the season. Do you, Miss Fox?
No, I think I'm fine. I mean, obviously I don't understand the full arc yet, but, like, I'm not mad at it because sometimes you need a key change. It's just how this works.
I don't know why I thought you were going to just say keychain.
Somebody need a keychain to snort cocaine off of.
Yeah,
that's right. That's right. To hold your cocaine. That's right.
Mm-hmm.
This podcast not endorsing using keychains for cocaine.
No.
It is endorsing leaving your door. No, it is endorsing your door being left open so the cat can get out. Are you guys watching the cat right now?
Yeah. Don't worry about that.
She's
That's not it for the audio
shredding the
medium.
chair,
It's
trying
fine.
to get me to turn around.
We're good. Don't worry about it. We're basically done. There's not much more to say about this one. It's a great episode, though.
Yeah.
I really loved it. I think, I don't know, would you want to see industry do more like this? And if so, with whom?
Okay, that is interesting, because I do feel like there is something special about being able to pull this off 3 seasons in and do it with a character who has been around. And again, I think that's, like, for me, I think the way that they can just, like, we've been watching this thing, they turn the camera, we focus in on Rishi, and again, it's like, I think the magic of it is that we really didn't know what was happening. But I was so angry at myself that I didn't mention this after episode 2, that Rishi is scratching his back the whole episode. We saw it this episode. It is gnarly. It is not. That is not good. That might be a persistent problem for Rishi moving forward.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know who else you do this with on the show. Who is
Robert.
Sort of the Robert full backstory episode. And actually maybe this show doesn't really do flashbacks, but I feel like a Robert flashback episode, because I feel like that's what he has been. But you can probably do it while being in the central timeline. Robert is probably the best choice in terms of someone we haven't got enough
full episode set at the Yasmin ship to figure out what the heck went down there.
So I did want to ask you too about this, because I was telling everybody last week, because you know how much I know about finances. I was telling everyone to sell your stock on Yasmin killing her dad, and I still think that could be what happens, but the fact that it got name dropped last episode, and so I'm super intrigued to hear you, Josh and Emily, talk about where you land on what happened on the boat, and has your opinion changed after last week, where we get that thing where some guy is like, "You kill your dad," and then she runs off, and then we get we see another moment of her dad yelling at her even after the confrontation that we've seen.
Yeah.
What happened?
I assume that that's probably what happened, and Harper was privy to it, and that's why they sort of have this unspoken bond at this point.
Maybe like fell in.
Or maybe he had a heart attack or
Like,
something.
Okay,
and
fell
they
in.
just, like,
I
pushed
said
him.
this is what I said last, was that I think that it's more likely that they did not, this is more manslaughter than a degree of murder.
Yeah.
Okay.
Manslaughter is a degree of murder, I think, but
It is. I'm
Yeah.
pretty sure. Yeah.
it's just the one that's not named a degree of murder.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that, like, something happened, he died, and they're like, oh well, like, oops.
Yeah.
I just feel like the reaction from Yaz and Harper together,
They've been relatively chill when they like kind of talk about it. So it's
Yeah.
like it is a little chill for these two people to have potentially like not just like watched a person die or participated in a person's death, but Yasmin's father's death. Like if that's what happened, then yeah, they're both playing it really cool to
But,
a
like,
troubling degree.
So we watch Yaz go, I can't believe I miss him so much.
yes.
That's not a thing you say about somebody that's still living, even if they ran away. Do you know what I mean? The way in which you would reflect on that?
Yeah.
Like you would be like, oh, I just miss him or whatever. But like the way that she speaks about it, I miss him so much. How can I miss somebody who I hated?
Mhm.
That kind of feels like he's dead.
Talking
That
about him in
feels like
past tense.
Yeah, that kind of feels like he's gone and he's not coming back, right?
Yeah. No, I do. I just feel like they're very, and this is the thing. I just get to, are they just like extremely good at covering up murder? Are they
They're extremely good at all the other types of lying that they do. Am I right? Like
That's
they are
true.
used to playing, like they code switch like nobody's business.
I do think
Is that part of the portfolio? Probably.
You all observed this last week, and it was so in the background that I completely missed that Jesse Bloom is apparently in prison.
Yeah. He's practicing his golf swing. Yeah.
So, maybe we are just setting up like season 4 industry prison break. We're just gonna like toss everybody in jail.
Oh my gosh.
Got to send the Schofield brothers after him.
We did learn apparently people is that Gus does seem to be just like working in California, and that he's just like fully off the show.
Yeah.
He did not go to jail, but he's working in California.
Yeah.
The last thing I think from this episode, just to touch up, what did you make of there's this like moment in the elevator with the woman who like did leak the Reddit comment.
Felicia, yeah.
Mhm.
And
or Venetia, sorry, not but by Venetia.
That's Robert's. It was Robert's fling for it, right? Is that right? Is that
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And she's like, yeah, like I lied about what you said, but like I got it. Like I got it right. Like I wrote in your voice, right? What do we make of that? That she's like, she did do it, but also is that just like she's so good at she didn't break an NDA? Like she actually did. She never said things that he said. She just approximated what he might have said and leaked it. Is that like what do we make of this? Her being the one who leaked it.
It's hard to read her because it's like, is this a power move? Are you leaving to like join Harper? Like, you know what I mean? I'm kind of like,
fun.
What's the strategy here? Because I don't think she just says goodbye and having planted all of that info without there being some sort of trail that we're going to follow with her. Does that make sense?
Well, I thought the thing that she says about why she quits is not like this place is toxic. She says,
right.
I'm bored of working for a dictatorship of dying men.
Right.
She says. So,
Which
I mean, that is a
totally fair.
Yeah, no, that is completely fair.
Yeah.
But she's bored. She's bored at this job. It's boring.
Venetia.
Her on Leviathan could be fun.
I think Venetia and Leviathan could be fun. I think Venetia is still going to be connected to Rob. They're still dating as far as we know, I believe. So
we didn't see if she gave him her papers for that too.
Right. Yeah, it's true. That's right. Yeah.
That's right.
Did not see that. And
can you imagine if you broke up with someone and you're like, I'd like to serve you these papers? I'm so sorry.
Sometimes you do if you're married.
Isn't that
true? That's
kind of what Berger did to Carrie?
Oh, a Post-it?
That's sort of serving papers.
Isn't this
sorry,
what,
I can't.
Isn't this what Ted Lasso did to? That's what happened, right?
Yeah.
On stage.
Yeah.
All right. Well, this was a great episode. This was tremendous.
Loved
I thought
it.
very stress, and this is the type of stuff I love. It was like that was the most stressful hour of television I've watched in a long time. I loved it.
Yeah.
Thanks for taking my
Yeah.
mind off of everything else.
Yeah, just like fill
was
my
great.
stomach with like an existential dread about fiction as opposed to reality. Like, I'll take that. Why not?
Yeah.
That's what we're here
Yeah.
for.
Yeah.
Just an added layer to the next nightmare jet lag dream we have.
Yeah. We'll
Yeah.
go back to touching the void now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's right.
We
Well,
know the void.
I'm currently I told this before we started that my Google search history, I think I'm gonna get whiplash from going from learning about the federal currency exchange between the sterling, pound and the American dollar, and then all of the Lord of Rings lore that I'm googling while I'm watching the Rings of Power, which Taryn and I will be covering the first 3 episodes soon. Should be coming out soon.
Can I put out
Please.
the
Yeah.
idea that Rishi is the Celebrimbor of industry?
Celebrimbor, yes.
Yeah, I think he's the Celebrimbor of industry. It's like he wants the glory.
If it was up to Rishi, I think he'd make different types of rings.
I think so too.
Have we thought about saying the Rishi is always
The Rishi
right?
is always right. That's right.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. I wonder what I'll learn from these shows from each other, from Rings of Power.
Rishi
and
would be
watching
very
Industry.
high on my list of the people on industry. It may even be like number 1 on my list of the people on industry who I would most be interested in seeing in Middle Earth, if not for the fact that like literally Jon Snow is on this show. So like I would be curious to see what that looked like.
We saw Jon Snow's butt last week and
We
Joel
did
Kim
see Jon
Booster's
Snow's
front.
butt. Yeah, we saw John's butt, Joel's front. Yeah. We saw Joel's Kim Booster.
We saw Joel Kim. That's very good.
Yeah.
Do you think that did Robert sleep with Frank? Did he sleep with him? Did he stay the night?
It was too casual, I think.
They were a little flirty though, and I liked
They were
it.
flirty.
Joel Kim Booster had a great interview at Vulture where he was like, "Oh, I was pretty sure that it wasn't just like an implication, but that's like what happened."
That's how I read it.
So that was his read on it. But I think that he's just a guest star, and I don't know that we're going to see much more of him. Hard to see much more.
I liked it.
Yeah, there's a lot of him. There's a lot of him. That interview is great, by the way. Him talking about getting called up for industry and loving the show, and like the full frontal being like a part of the package of the offer, and him being like, "Yeah, let's go, let's do it." Great interview, and I think a very shocking scene if it was any other show. If it was any other show, but not on industry, very little can shock me.
The horniest show, you called it earlier.
It's the horniest show. It's maybe even like less the horniest show. In some ways, it's just like the most perverted show. Come on, guys, like rein it in. I'm not supposed to kink shame the show.
You shouldn't.
I'm not going to kink shame industry.
No, I know Mickey.
But Rishi's like little feet kicking at the edge of the bed is rent free in my mind for the next couple of days. That's for sure.
When they pitched the show to HR, they were like, "We want to call it the horniest show." And they're like, "What about industry?" And they're like, "Yeah, okay."
Yeah, we'll call it industry.
Okay,
that'll hook them in.
Well, what I've been saying, and I meant to do this up top, but I think that people have been enjoying this. They should be subscribing to the We Know Scripted TV feed. They should be checking us out on YouTube. We're here live. You can see our faces. You should also be telling a friend about our industry recaps and how fun they are. And that we talk about Joel Kim Booster. Joel's Kim
Booster. Yeah.
Very good.
Yes.
So tell a friend. Yes, much more happening on We Know Scripted TV. Josh, you're in the midst of a Lost rewatch. You're back down the hatch.
We're back down the hatch. We're supplying Lost recaps for folks who have never seen Lost before. So they are seasonal recaps. It's a mini series. Don't worry, Emily. I'm not doing a full episodic rewatch of Lost.
I literally.
Sorry, I didn't mean to.
I don't know how many more ways you can slice and dice this show, but
I'm not trying to get served
Wigler.
papers here on the pod. But we're doing season recaps. They are spoiler free for the first time viewers. So you watch season 1, you'll listen to the season 1 recap. You finish season 2, you listen to the season 2 recap. Down the Hatch Reborn here on RHAP. We know scripted TV. So subscribe, as Grace says. Tell your friends. robhasawebsite.com/scripted. That's robhasawebsite.com/scripted.
Kelly Wentworth talked about Grey's Anatomy.
Talked about Grey's Anatomy.
What a delight! What a treat!
Yeah.
Weekend program, watching Only Murders in the Building.
Yeah, so much
Slow Pranos. So much going on. So tell a friend. We'll be back next week with season 3, episode 5, Company Man. Episode Company Man. And until then, we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye.